Okay, guys, welcome to Unlocking Potential, the Transformative Power of Higher Education Programs in Prison. We are going to talk a little bit about some of the programs that are offered, one of the programs that are offered in Maryland, some of our partner organizations. We also have, and I was trying to make it, I hope I didn't when I was trying to make this bigger, their picture bigger, that's when it went out on me. So, okay, there they are. We'll get to introductions, but this is Meredith Conde. She is our director of uh, college operations. Too many directors in my programs for Goucher College and Mr. J. Jones at MCIJ. They are zooming in from Maryland Correctional Institute in Jessup, Maryland, and joining us. And I'll let them introduce themselves in 1 second, but I just want to let you know who all was on the video here as panelists helping us out. All right, so let me see if I can get this thing to advance now. Come on, let's go. Ta-da! Okay. We're gonna do some quick introductions, let everybody kind of talk about themselves quickly. I'm gonna get into a little bit of background about the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services in Maryland. Introduce myself too, obviously, and then Ramika, who will be up here in a second, will talk about the Goucher Prison Education Program along with Meredith. And then Jeff will come up, talk about PD Green, then we'll take some questions. This is actually, when was this picture? Last May? Okay. This is actually Mika's wonderful other half, who also went through some of our programs, but is now works for All right. We are having some massive technical difficulty, which is hilarious how you guys in a prison taken.
I was like, how are we the ones that are fine?
How do I get my presentation up? Well, that I'll have to go to presentation mode though, right? Hold on. Hold on, guys. I'm just trying to get the. Well, yeah, but if I do I need to do presentation mode, right? Slideshows. All right, now. How do I get it to go? I need to get the Zoom again. No. Because if I hit the escape, it's gonna go up to that, you know? 'Cause before it had. Ugh. Yeah, but now I need it to be under. There. All right, we back? Meredith? You
Yes,
good?
we're
Okay.
good.
Work. Okay, here, I need to give you, because this one down. I have no sock. We will figure this out. All right. Other than Director of Education, for Maryland, I also am on the COA board, along with various other things, but that's the biggest role. I'm going to be more the moderator for this, pitching in here and there, but I'm going to mostly let the stars of the show take this, and run with it, which is here. I'll figure out where to plug it in while you introduce yourself.
Hi guys, how are you today? Sorry for all of the technical difficulties, but we're here and we made it through. My name is Ramika Robinson Peoples. I am the Director of Continuing Education and Professional Advancement with the Goucher Prison Education Partnership at Goucher College. I know it's a lot. And I just want to talk briefly about where my journey started. My journey started in 2012. I was a part of the first initial cohort of 15 students to pilot GPEP program in the inside. Post-release, I joined Goucher College main campus. I also joined on staff. That was nearly 8 years ago. And since then, moving on to present day, I've recently was promoted to this position. I am currently getting my bachelor's degree in business management, minor in sociology, anthropology in May, and looking towards master's degree programs and just really enjoying this work. Truly an advocate, I know it sounds so cliche, of the transformative power of education and what that means. I am living proof that this work works and that education does transform lives. I know we talk a lot about second chances, but as it is April 1st, tomorrow, and it is officially Second Chance Month, I just want to highlight that some people never even received the first chance. So just being mindful that second chances are welcome, but sometimes it may be someone's first chance, and we just should always keep that in the forefront of our minds when we're doing this work. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to connecting with each and every one of you individually after panel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meredith Conde. I'm Director of Operations and Prison Affairs for GPEP, also with Goucher College. I have been with GPEP for about 4 years in a bunch of different roles. The past 2 years, kind of doing the work that I'm doing now as the Director of Operations. I oversee all of our student-facing work in both MCIJ and also the women's facility, NCIW. We have about 130 students enrolled across the two facilities.
Good afternoon. My name is J. Anthony Jones. I graduated in 2024, and I'm the current Goucher Fellow. I've been with Goucher since I've been enrolled in Goucher since 2017. I want to say the fall of 17.
Thank you, guys. And Jeff, your turn. You went, there's a mic right there too.
There you go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Abramowitz. I'm currently the CEO of the PD Green Program, which is a national nonprofit that does educational tutoring inside and outside of prisons and jails across the country. I wear a really different lens in this particular environment, simply because I given a presentation earlier today about what it was, the importance of education behind the walls and best practices. But I also do a lot of work for, well, I should say this. I was doing a lot of work for the U.S. Department of Education, which terminated last Monday. So a lot of the contracts that I had that provided for IET in the correction setting, these integrated education trainings, and working to support the correctional reentry curriculum and development have ceased. So we'll talk a little about that. But I have done a lot of work in the Pell Grant arena and hope to share some of those insights from Washington as to things that we know and things that we don't.
All right. I am not going to read this. It's just really quickly talking about kind of like our mission at DPSCS for education, and just making sure that all the programming that we offer not only reduces recidivism, that's a byproduct of making sure that we have sustainable employment post-release, right? We have that and we're able to give education and those employment opportunities, and recidivism will end up, hopefully we'll put ourselves out of jobs eventually. So, okay, this, let me see here if I can make this a little smaller because I want you guys to be able to see this. What we did recently with some of our career and technical education programs, our GED programs, was looked at our recidivism rates in comparison to those who were in those programs and then who entered with already a pre-existing GED or high school diploma into Maryland prisons. And then we broke that out by incarcerations, like previous incarceration numbers, and then also age. And there's a reason for that. What we saw was that the younger, and I'll say that a lot incarcerated individual, we don't say inmate Maryland, it's incarcerated individual or justice impacted. The younger someone is, and the more incarcerations they've had, or even the older they are, it's that previous incarceration that really is the kicker. It doesn't matter if they came in with a GED or high school diploma, if we got them a GED or high school diploma while they're incarcerated. It doesn't matter either whether we got them any sort of reentry programming, occupational certification. If they have 2 or more previous incarcerations, you can see. The reason why it has NA, we just started this work, we have very little in that age group. With the previous incarcerations, if you think about it, if you're 17, how many previous, hopefully you don't have too many previous incarcerations. But that NA just means we didn't have enough of a group, a higher enough to make it statistically significant for me to put a percentage there. But if you look down in our 26 plus, if they have a previous 2 or more incarcerations, if you look at the received TON, the Transitional Occupational National Certification. Occupational, when we talk about occupational Maryland, we just mean Department of Labor issued certificates. National means like NCCR, ACE, like those type of certifications. If they came in with a pre-existing GED or high school diploma, they got one while inside, you can see the numbers, right? We're in the 30s. However, 2 or more previous incarcerations, we are bumped up to anywhere between high 50s to mid 60s in your recidivism rates. That's significant. That is extremely significant. So if this is what we're seeing in our little state, right? Imagine nationwide, what is happening? And really, I kind of wish I, in a way, was like on the research end, and really wish somebody would kind of look into this a little bit more to see that age groups and that previous incarceration and what we do. Because a lot of times we just talk about recidivism, period. Or we talk about, oh, this age group, this, or we got them a correctional education program, or they went through adult basic ed while inside, and the recidivism rate dropped by this, or was less than that. Well, but not if we look at previous incarceration rates. That's where I think we need to really do some work, right? On making sure that those people were doing something wrong there. That if they are getting out and continuing to come back to prison, even though we're giving them those education opportunities, what is wrong? What is happening that is causing them to come back again, right? I mean, a lot of it goes with, depending on where they go back to, their home is, friends, that sort of thing. Yes, but we've seen significant strides where you can help people get through that with reentry program, wraparound services, housing, transportation, that sort of thing, right? If we do not, and I talked about this a little in my presentation earlier, is if we just give them education, that's it, and they hit the door, it's not going to matter. It really isn't. You have to be also providing those community-based organization supports. Otherwise, they're just going to end up back again, right? And we really shouldn't start looking at employment, right? And making sure that we're getting them those wraparound services with employment and education to make sure this recidivism rate drops. And one of the things that we saw, we looked actually at Goucher's program. They start back in 2012. I looked at when I first came into this job in 2022, we looked at like the 10-year. And over that time period, all we looked at was released students who went through 2 or more semesters at Goucher College. Didn't even have to graduate at all. 3% recidivism rate. 3%. That's insane. They didn't even get a degree. And for the most part, and Meredith can tell you, they are going back post-release and getting that degree at Goucher. But a lot of it is that because those supports, that reentry services, that housing, those transportation, it's the stuff the college is doing to help support them post-release, to get them back there. Childcare, especially for our women, right? I'm sure Ramika can attest to this. We have to make sure that we're providing that, because otherwise it's just not gonna matter in the long run. I know, kind of bleak way to start things, but sets the stage. All right. I keep having to hit that. This is just really quick. Pell restoration slide kind of tells you where everything moved away from the second chance Pell that started in 2016, ended then with a second chance, the FAFSA Simplification Act, then in 2020 to have programs come July 1st, 2023 could apply to become now a prison education program. And that meant that anybody behind the fence already is a second chance Pell had to reapply again. So that it wasn't just like you're grandfathered in now. No, it's like a 2-year process to go through, depending on the state and their approval process, and then getting your application to the Department of Ed, and then hoping that that actually makes it to somebody's hands, and doesn't get, there were some issues with the email address at one point. That got figured out, but now there's a lot of concerns with the new federal issues that are going on. And I know a lot of places are starting to get a little antsy about that, mine included. And then, of course, it put a lot of stress, or not stress, but it put a lot of emphasis on that oversight entity, which is your Department of Corrections, to then do a best interest determination. Basically, the legislation says your Department of Corrections approves the colleges coming behind the fence, right? They're one of those approving authorities. They figure out that approval path. They have to do that final approval. Then 2 years after that, they get approved by the department head to come in. The DOC has to do that best interest determination to make sure that that college is still acting in the best interest of the students. So that there are specific measures for that. And then DOCs could add in other measures to it too, depending on how stringent or difficult they wanted to make it be. But it's at that 2-year point. What we decided to do in Maryland, you had to have a stakeholder advisory committee that looks over that best interest determination goals, make sure that they are working, is kind of like that guiding resource for your Department of Corrections, which is great because I didn't want to be the one making that decision myself. Hey, guys, you can either see you spent all this money, you've been here for 2 years, or God forbid, you're a second chance Pell, you've been here since 2016, and now I'm having you hit the door, right? And saying bye. I need to make sure I have a committee of people helping me make that decision, right? So again, we'll not go through all these people who are on it, but the first two are the most important ones, are the 2 previously incarcerated individuals that sit on our advisory committee, one of which has their own organization. The other one actually is part of Goucher's program. And then I have a currently incarcerated individual who also sits on it too, which kind of helps even out some of these very high bigwig other people that are sitting on this committee to help us make those decisions. I will point out really quick, one of the most important ones that sit on here is the Maryland Longitudinal Data System. They are comprised of basically, it's like the higher ed, Department of Ed, head of baby melded together. It has our Department of Labor data. It has our unemployment data for the state. So I'm able to get not just higher ed information on, incarcerated individuals who went through programs, who got released. Are they getting jobs in the field in which we gave them the degree or the certification? And also, what are their wages? So I'm able to see their wages, median wages, quarterly wages over each quarter after release, both the first and third year post-release. And if we are corrections people, you know that the first year post-release is the most important year post-release, is when we see the most people come back, right? If they can get out and stay out 3 years, awesome, we did something right? But you don't obviously want to just stop. You want to continue to make sure that they are doing well. Maryland Longitudinal Data Systems, they have all of it in their center. So they get labor's unemployment data, they get the higher ed, and they actually now, when I took over in 2002, one of the issues was that our higher ed programs, they didn't know, they had the main data of like everybody who was taking college programs in Maryland. Every college student, right? They get all that data from MAC, our higher ed commission. But what they weren't able to see was, okay, which one of these actually went through a program inside. So we started putting a ticker on it. So when they are actually enrolled into the program, the enrollment administration people at the college can tick this box that it is a prison education program. So now I can just pull them out of that. So I can actually look at those who aren't in prison education programs, the ones that do go through prison education programs. I can see high school, I can see K through 12 data, unemployment records, income, all that good stuff, even the sector that they work in. It's pretty cool. Yeah. It's a work in progress, but it's pretty cool. All right. And again, this is a very complicated graphic on our approval process, basically 5 steps. They come to me, say, hey, I want to have this program behind the fence. I take and I look at our employment data. I look at what our students are interested in. I looked at the sectors that students are actually graduating from college and getting degree or getting jobs in, to make the decision whether to give them a thumbs up or thumbs down with a conditional letter of approval that yes, they can come behind the fence. Then they got to get our Maryland Higher Education Commission's approval. Then they come back to my advisory committee for approval, that big one that I showed you, that advisory committee. They do our final approval, do the MOU collaboration. Then it goes to the Middle States. So the Middle States Organization for Accreditation approval. Then it goes to, after all that information goes to the Department of Ed for final approval. Then we do a 1-year evaluation, because I do not want, after 2 years, to again have to tell a college bye when I didn't tell them that there was a problem to begin with, right? So we do a 1-year, we actually do a 6-year, 1 year, or sorry, 6 months, 1 year, then another 6-month check-in, and then the 2-year to do that final decision. So at no point will they not know that there's an issue happening, that there's a problem that we need to make sure gets, resolved. All right, enough about me. Really quick running through just some of the college programs. We have the University of Baltimore, which is at our Jessup Correctional Institution. They've been there since 2016. They have a bachelor's degree in Human Service Administration. They're getting ready to do an interdisciplinary communications degree, also business communications. Then we have Bowie State University, which was our first HBCU behind the fence, doing a Bachelor's of Science in Sociology. They're one of the newer ones. Georgetown University is at one of our institutions. They have a liberal arts degree, bachelor's degree, and basically it's like liberal arts, and there's 3 different tracks they can go down. And that's a great picture of some of the guys that were in the program, or currently in the program. Then we have Warwick Community College, which unfortunately will be shuttering its program after this spring. A lot of community colleges across the nation are doing so. They just can't afford to get the staff that they need to be able to continue as a prison education program full-time. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Mhm. If it is a brand new program that had not first gotten approval from the Department of Ed for that specific degree path and program, yes. If it's a totally new degree program, correct. But I'm not sure how. I know there was some talk before. Jeff, do you know if I know there was some talk before about if you already have a program approved and you want to add on something else, does that, every single one of them have to get approved, or can they? I didn't think so now. That's what I meant. You still gotta technically get approval, submit it and get because the accreditation still has to be a separate site and all that kind of stuff too. Yeah. My process would be easy to go through. It would be the Department of Ed that might take a while. Yeah, to get that new one approved. Okay, last thing for me. Currently enrolled students here in spring 2025, we have 234 total graduates over the life of the program. Second chance Pell, some of them started, we started a little off. Goucher 2012, 2016 were the other ones, and then some other ones stepped up through here. Georgetown is nobody, neither is Bowie, because they're brand new programs. Remember, you're behind the fence. If you're only going part-time, it's going to take a good 6 to 8 years to get your degree done. If it is a 4-year bachelor degree program, unless they're doing full-time, then you'll be closer to that 4 or 5 year mark. So, and Goucher has had the most between their 2 sites because they've been with us for the longest. Okay. And then we have Towson University getting ready to come in. They're currently in approval process. And then 2 community colleges, which I'm excited about, bringing in welding and some AA certificate programs in business and general studies, which the general studies AA will be great because they can go through that program and they could just go into, that's the first 2 years of some of these other bachelor degree programs. So then they could transfer into some of those other bachelor degree programs. So, all right. Now I'm going to stop talking. We are going to hear from Meredith and Ramika.
Yep. So I'm gonna start off and just talk about some of GPAP's history specifically. And just some very grounding information about GPAC. All of our students are pursuing a bachelor's degree in American Studies, which is an interdisciplinary humanities degree, which allows them to take classes in a lot of different disciplines. So if they are released before they graduate, maybe they don't want to continue with an American Studies degree, but they have some credits in another field and they can transfer those credits and pursue that as well. So it's a way of getting them towards the degree with like a high level of like option and agency post-release. But to talk a little bit about our history, GPEC was, well, essentially before GPEC, Goucher had a handful of faculty on the Towson campus who were offering workshops in prisons as far back as 2005. And then in 2012, the college was like super invested in this work and very passionate and decided that it's a lot of work for faculty to do in addition to being faculty. So they hired actual staff to start GPEC and start offering classes at both MCIW and MCIJ. So that was like a huge deal. In 2016, Second Chance Pell became available and GPEC applied and received approval to be a Second Chance Pell site. So that made us one of, I think 67 other colleges across the nation that were able to use Pell to support our work in addition to a lot of mostly private funding. It was essentially, I would say, because of GPEC students like hard work and those other students who were at those Second Chance Pell sites that the DOAE like looked at that data and decided to move forward with reinstating Pell for, you know, all incarcerated students across the nation. So I think that's like very significant to acknowledge their work in doing that. And then I think GPEC does fit nicely into sort of Goucher's broad values. Goucher started as a women's college. So there's like a dedication to expanding access to folks who typically do not have access to education. And so I think GPEC fits nicely into Goucher for that reason.
And Meredith, I really quickly say that 2012 was what, 4 years before Second Chance Pell? So they were funding this out of
Yes.
pocket, endowment funds, donations, both staff, faculty, and tuition and everything before the federal government came in and picked up any money for it.
I appreciate you saying that, Danielle, and even now with Pell funding about 20 to 25% of our funding, the majority is still coming from private donations and endowment.
This is you or her? A student experience.
So I just want to talk a little bit about like the student experience. Just the admissions process altogether. And so we don't discriminate or exclude students that we don't feel is not ready for college on an academic level. We don't exclude students based on their criminal offenses. We don't ask, we don't want to know, we don't care. All we care about is providing access to quality education and the ways that students prove to us that they are ready for college. What does that look like? A student could come through the admissions process, and I'll let Meredith talk more about what that admissions process looks like. But they will come through, let's say they take a course, they take a test, a placement exam, writing, we offer writing, math, Spanish. Am I missing one, Meredith? Okay. And depending on where that student tests for that placement exam, we have college preparatory classes to help them prepare for college. So we don't look at their scores and say, you failed this test, you're not a part of us. We say, you didn't do well on this test, but we believe in you, you can do well on this test. And to prepare you for these courses, we're going to pair you with volunteers, tutors that come in. We're going to pair you with provide supplemental instruction courses. We're just going to provide you with a sea of resources to help you get ready for college. So what does it look like when we're assessing what students, if a student is ready for college with Goucher or GPEP? Was that student on time? Was that student engaged? Did that student take the initiative? Did they show up prepared and ready to go? Because these are the things that we need the students to have. Everything else, I mean, we'll support that student in terms of what that looks like. We just want to make sure that they have those types of skills. And then building the college community and what that looks like. In 2012, a part of the initial cohort, our college community looked like a group of 15 women supporting each other. That's just what it looked like outside of the classrooms. People that may have never spoken to each other in the first 8 years of their bid were now at a table unpacking lessons that were learned in the classroom, solving quadratic equations and what that looks like, right? And the conversation was different. The connections began to evolve and strengthen, and we built community. We found peace amongst each other in community and around a subject matter that mattered to everyone, right? And then we had a village. We moved as a team. If there were, undeniably, there were students in our cohort that were stronger than others. The ones that were stronger than others were responsible for the ones that wasn't so strong, right? And we rallied in support of one another. So if someone didn't show up to class, everyone was at that person's door. Hey, what's going on with you? Are you okay? Let's check in, let's talk, right? And building that type of community means so much more because we all had a shared experience, and we all kind of, even though we didn't know each other, we kind of trusted each other, right? And it's something about building relationships that don't have ulterior motives. When you're in a place where you're stripped of everything and all you have is each other, right? I know that Susan isn't sitting next to me because she wants any type of monetary gain or promotion from me, right? I know that Susan is sitting next to me because she genuinely wants to receive a college education and do better, right? For her life and her children's lives. So just thinking about like what that looks like, learning together, collaborating together, and feeling comfortable to admit when we don't know something. So again, just briefly about what that experience looked like for me as a GPEP student and what I see. My post position, I served as a senior site director and one piece of my job was to serve as academic advisor to a subset group of students. And that vibe still lives on today. And just think about it, from 2012, now we're in 2025. Over 10 years later, this is the same vibe. And it proves that community is the foundation in which we're built upon as well. Meredith, do you want to add?
No, I think you did an excellent job. The only two sort of like tidbits about our admissions process that might be interesting for folks to think about is that at least or roughly 50% of GPEP students earned their GED while they were incarcerated. So you could you have folks who are coming into the facility with no high school diploma and leaving with some college credit or even a college degree. So I think that's really helpful context to think about. And then I also just wanted to note that we do hold spaces for 3 DPSCS staff members to take classes when we run admissions, and that is an acknowledgement that a lot of the DPS staff come from the same sort of backgrounds that some of the folks inside come from. And so we want to make sure, you know, that it's clear that GPEP's mission is about educational access, broadly speaking, and we understand we're just one piece of the puzzle, but we do hold those spaces open, and we have had officers enroll alongside students. That is very cool. All right, should I continue on to student outreach? All right.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give a sort of a brief summary of some of the different opportunities that students have who are enrolled through GPEP. And then we're gonna throw it to Jay, who has done a lot of these things and can probably speak to it a little bit more familiarly. The first one is academic minors. So I mentioned that all GPEP students are pursuing a degree in American Studies. Obviously, not every single GPEP student might have chosen the American Studies major were they to enroll in a traditional campus as a traditional student. And so understanding that, we did pursue and get approval for GPEP students to declare minors. So if they are going along and really enjoying like all of their political science classes. If they can't get a political science major, they could declare and get a political science minor, literary studies, history. So there's like any academic minor that is offered on the Towson campus is also offered to GPET students. So that's just like a really cool thing that we're excited about. We also have an opportunity for peer tutoring. So throughout the semester, we have undergraduate students from other regional colleges, as well as outside community members who are qualified, come in and provide tutoring to support students in their classes. Mika sort of alluded to that earlier. Was it 2 or 3 years ago now? About 3 years ago, we expanded that opportunity to serve as a tutor to our current students inside. And now all of our tutors, both from the outside and inside, train together at the beginning of the semester. GPET students commit to providing tutoring at least once a week for a full 15-week semester. This is something we include on letters of recommendation for them. So it's an opportunity to sort of, you know, train and learn amongst a different group of people and then support give back to their community. We also recently started a student voice council. So students did have to apply and interview. And the Student Voice Council essentially just serves as a way for our staff to get a sense of like what types of programming students might be interested in. It's an avenue for students to propose new clubs or new activities. So it's an opportunity for leadership, but also really an opportunity for students to speak directly to our staff and provide recommendations, which is great. Speaking of student clubs, we did have a improv club for several semesters, which was just for the pure fun of improv. So that was cool. And again, the Student Voice Council is designed to help have students sort of suggest more clubs that they might want inside. GPET students are also, like students on the Towson campus, eligible to do a senior thesis, which is a very extensive 2-semester independent study. They pick a topic, they research it in depth. Jay is going to talk about his very shortly. That you get 8 credits, you graduate with honors in the major, you have to have a 3.5 GPA in the major to even propose to do a senior thesis. It's a pretty high honor at Goucher period, so we're very excited. We've had 2 students complete them, and we have 1 student in the process of completing hers at MCIW this spring. And then lastly, we also offer a GPEP fellowship, which is a professional growth opportunity for alumni and current students. Students do have to apply. They serve in a term for an academic year. They work with our staff on a bunch of projects and then tasks. Again, Jay is going to speak about his work as a fellow in a second. But that was a very exciting opportunity we've been able to open up, and it'll culminate, Jay knows this, I think, in an essay where he'll sort of reflect on the work that he's doing, and the fellowship is paid with a stipend that is benchmarked at $17 an hour, which is also a great opportunity. I think we're
All
throwing
right. The star of the show, right?
Hi, Jay. How are you today?
So fun.
Could you give us an overview of your senior thesis and walk us through the experience of writing it?
So my senior thesis was about 2 syndromes, post-incarceration syndrome and post-incarceration transition syndrome, and whether these 2 syndromes could be healed using cognitive behavioral therapy, transitional therapy, or into psychotherapy. One of the reasons that I wrote it was because when you move in this environment, you begin to see abnormal behavior normalized. And seeing abnormal behavior normalized, it had to be a reason why. And so that's what I chose first, to look at that reason why this behavior started to become normalized, from being antisocial, from having substance abuse issues and stuff like that, was running rampant here. So with it being running rampant here, it's like being able to step back and look at the environment and see what causes this. And then not only looking at what causes it, but trying to heal it. Because one of the things that we seen earlier in one of the slides, looking at recidivism, looking at people continually going uptown and continually coming back to prison, it had to be something that was fueling that. And I felt that the information available about these two syndromes spoke a lot to the issue. But once I found out about the issue, it was like, man, now how do we heal it? And looking at being able to treat it, I wanted to look at these therapeutic models that I knew of and I was familiar with. Writing it was a challenge. It was a challenge, not so much because of the therapeutic models or the symptoms themselves, but because so many different ways that I can go down a rabbit hole, from looking at brain development, from looking at like just substance abuse issues and stuff like that. And then when we look at these actual symptoms, when you look at post-incarceration transition syndrome, which was built and defined by Dr. Max Ragland, this was specific to the African American experience. And he was talking about how within the communities, African Americans was being groomed with a criminal mentality. And then they come to prison, and then that criminal mentality begin to blossom. And as that criminal mentality begin to blossom, the system itself begin to set up roadblocks for the person not to get rid of that criminal mentality. And then you had, while in prison, you had an overlap in a post-incarceration syndrome, which speaks to the development of antisocial disorder, which speaks to the development of drug addiction, which speaks to all the things that people that do, let's say, lengthy sentences begin to exhibit abnormal behaviors, and these abnormal behaviors begin to feed itself. Like, for example, one of the norms in prison, if somebody do something, you have to step in, you have to nip it in the bud early, fast, and thoroughly, because if not, it'll open doors for so much other stuff to happen. But uptown, somebody might bump into me, and I might keep walking down the street like it's nothing. The way as though in prison, it becomes a life or death moment. It becomes a moment where it's like, hold on, I have to address this now, because if not, there's something else might happen later, or he might think I'm a sucker, so he might try to steal my food, or he might try to take something else from me. And that thinking is not healthy for us in here, those are healthy for the community. But this was the same thing that's been taken out to the community, and then you see recidivism and all that come into play. So as I started, it was wild. It was a bunch of areas that I wanted to look into, but I had to narrow it in order to, within 1 year, to complete writing it, to make it interesting, and then still stay on topic in such a way where I do justice to the issue, because this is an issue that's directly affecting my life and affecting many other people's lives throughout the United States. And then through doing that, I wanted to talk about incarceration in general, because the United States tend to have one of the largest incarcerated population throughout the world. And we said that this is the home of the brave and the land of the free and stuff like that, but we tend to find people abnormally incarcerated. Then when we look at Maryland prison population, 70% Black, and Maryland tends to give out the largest sentence, the largest sentences through every other nation, through every other state in the United States. So looking at that in these different rabbit holes, I didn't want to go down because it was so much to talk about. So to thin it out and to stay focused and to stay on topic was one of the greatest challenges I faced.
Thank you for that. And then just quickly, I want to ask you about the fellowship specifically. I want to ask you, how long have you been serving as a fellow? What do you currently do in this role in terms of projects and tasks? And any reflections on your experience as a fellow? What have you learned?
Okay. So first, I've been serving for close to a year now. Some of the tasks that I had to complete, or some of the tasks that was put in front of me, was like, we inventoried all equipment here. We helped pass out the books and stuff like that. We helped whenever the teachers or any of the tutors came in, we helped to make sure that everything was well, they was good, and that any problems that they had that we could assist and that we did. We networked between the institution, like the officers and the professors, to make sure that, you know, the classrooms was open, the classrooms was set up. I set up all the technology, and for instance, like whenever they were showing documentaries and stuff like that, and then I helped with that actual enrollment process, getting letters out to the students, making sure that the proper count-offs was different places, was in the places they need to be, and making sure everybody was aware of what was going on and materials was handed out. The impact for me on my personal life was, it made me see my future different, in the sense of, like, even with everything I know, studying my thesis and all that, I still didn't really see myself going uptown and network. And it was like, man, I'm gonna go uptown and I'm gonna be a truck driver. And then from driving trucks, then I'm gonna try to venture out and do a little bit of social work here and there. To where as though when you look at my skill set, when you look at all the stuff that I was able to complete and do here, like being a social worker should be at the forefront. And what I mean by that is like the information that I gained through going to college helped me like within, we run youth challenge, I run friend of a friend, I run the art club, I run AVP. So within all these spaces, it demands for me to be social. It demands for me to like see the person coming in and then give them whatever I had for them so that they could leave better than I found them, right? And so looking at that, this opportunity forced me to see the probability of doing that when I'm uptown. Because even in this role, you had different men come to me asking questions and needing assistance to get into college. Asking me like people I might have walked past and never talked to was flagging me down when maybe I was somewhere else and it wasn't as convenient. But still like networking with them, still making sure that they had the necessary information for them to take some of the steps I took. This role, like, it showed like, man, the challenge of it, the challenge of being in prison and not allowing yourself to become a part of prison, if that makes sense. Meaning not giving into the desire, like mine, just to stand over there and move through prison and make myself successful, but always pulling other people with me.
So Jay, we're gonna ask you one last thing before we move into Jeff, and it'll actually kind of segue into what he's gonna talk about anyways, which is about your time with peer tutoring. And why did you do it? What does it contribute to the college community there at MCIJ? How has it helped you?
So when I first came in GPAC, it was three guys: William Freeman, Kennard, and Maurice Smith. And one of the first things that they did when I came in, I knew two of the three before I enrolled in GPAC. And knowing on the compound, they challenged me to come in GPAC. They challenged me to show that I'm as smart as I am and come in here and put basically myself to the task. And as I came in here, they went from just being my friends and stepped into the role of mentor to make sure that coming in here, I was good for the space and then I understood the duty that I now had. And through moving through it, they challenged me not to be so isolated and to speak in class and stuff like that. So once they transitioned, they basically told me like, man, now it's your turn, right? And saying now it's your turn, they told me to stand up under and do the same thing for the men that's coming behind me that they did for me. And deeper than that, it was like, man, I was seeing a lot of guys that were struggling with stuff that I didn't find as hard. So it was like being I was a peer tutor before the position was actually open. I was a peer tutor through after we left class, still making sure that the guys understood what just transpired. They understood the information and that I explained it in such a way where it became easy for them to understand because I knew that I could take this information and then put it into their experience. And then taking it another step further. Like when I first learned how to do math, when I came to prison, I couldn't count. And I struggled at math. But even struggling at math, it was something that brought me peace. So now it was like, man, I could do the same thing for somebody else and awaken in them that which was sleeping me. And help them move forward and help them understand math in such a way that allowed them to be successful.
Right. And that helps us. We're going to skip forward a little bit because I do want Jeff to come on up and talk a little bit about tutoring. That was a great segue talking about how tutoring supports college programs and especially some of PD Green's programming with College Bridge and that stuff. So Jeff, I'm gonna let you either come up here or do
Yeah.
that or whichever. We're gonna.
So good afternoon, everybody. So first of all, I got to address Jay. Jay, thank you so much. It's great. It's great to see you there. I think we need to do more of this. We need to get the lived experience behind our programs and actually see and hear what they're doing and how awesome it is behind the walls, and hope that as they leave, that they transition to the same place where they're helping others. Jay, I sat in your seat not long ago. So I was a lawyer for a long time, made some bad choices, and was handed a federal indictment, and spent 5 years in the federal system. So I know what it's like to be in those chairs and to be a tutor and actually run a GED class and teach inside the walls. And there's a difference and there's a challenge that men have. I always say the three hardest words for people behind the walls to say are, I don't know. And that's because they're coming into a culture where, it's survival inside of the prison a lot of times, and it's about who knows what and who's teaching what. So teaching inside is a power position, really super important. I want to talk quickly about PD Green, and then I'm going to talk about the Pell Grant program, because I did some time away and I lost my filter. And when I tell you today is how I feel about the Pell Grant system, where it is and where I think it's going, and some of the great work that's being done in the prison education programs around the country. But the PD Green program was founded by the class of 1958 at Princeton University. We are an organization that does educational tutoring both inside and outside of prisons and jails in the country. Our motto is really simple. We take college students, we train them to be tutors, and then we take them inside the walls with us, or we work with people on the way out, on the outside, to help them continue their educational goals. Many times people inside of our carceral settings, they start a program inside and then they're discharged for one reason or another, the program's pulled back or whatever. They're left hanging when they go out, or there's nothing that guides them to the end, then what? Okay, I got the certification, then what? What do I do next? What do I do with it? So our program is really meant to give them that guidance, that support, and to work one-on-one with them. We do it both virtually and live. We prefer live. We've been around for 15 years, and we've touched over 20,000 students, where we're in 130 facilities. We work with universities and colleges all across the country. So really excited about that work, and very proud to be their CEO. We also have some other programs, and probably the most important one is a College Bridge program, which is going to lead me into the Pell Grant. So College Bridge is a program where we get people ready to go into college. You get their high school diploma inside, or you get your GED, and then the next thing is for them to take advantage of the Pell Grant arena and go to college. But the truth is that just because you get a high school diploma doesn't mean you're college ready. And what ends up happening inside the walls is we give people into these programs, and all of a sudden they're failing out. They're not completing. They're using all their Pell dollars up strictly on prerequisite classes. So the College Bridge program is a free program offered to every student that we interact with that helps them bridge those math, basic English, writing programs that can get them prepared for college, and super proud of that. We also have a Center for Educational Justice and Equity, which I'm really proud of as well. But I really want to talk about Pell for a second, because we're here about the education programs and the importance of Pell. And Pell, when Pell was reinstated, there were 700,000 students that were potentially eligible for Pell. Now, I was here, I don't know, does anybody in the room know Secretary Scott Stump? Assistant Secretary. Was our U.S. Assistant Secretary of Department of Education in Washington. And Scott's here. We met last night. We've become friendly over the years. And Scott and I were talking, and he asked me last night, he said, Jeff, what do you think? How's it going? Because he was in office when the prior Trump administration got Pell approved and got the window opened up. And I'm going to tell him the same thing I told you. And I hope that, I don't care if it gets out or not. I think it's horrible. I think it's horrible. First of all, there's very few schools that actually got approved during when the Pell window opened up. If we're going to do it, then do it right. Then get them through. They have applications sitting, stacks and stacks of college applications for approval, and a handful get through. Period. So the second part is that we're in a world now where college is not the only alternative for people going through school. And a lot of people jumped into the Pell arena thinking that this was going to be a career pathway for them, that they were going to. The truth is there's so many barriers inside, and that's why places like Goucher that are doing it right, and what you're hearing from Jay are incredible, is because they're taking the time to make sure that the student is ready, that they're ready for college, and they're giving them guidance to succeed when they walk out the door, so that they can go for their master's, so that they can go and get a career opportunity and that kind of thing. We are, our Pell Grant program, does anyone know how we have 46,000 students gone through Pell since it's reopened? Does anybody know what the completion rate is? If you were in my session this morning, you knew. Yeah, how many? 4%. So, in a world where we're cutting everything from our education budgets and all these different departments, how long do you really think we're going to keep Pell in the system with a 4% completion rate? It just doesn't, and it's no knock on the system. It's just a knock on that this is the bureaucracy. If we're going to do it, gosh, we should do it right. And that means we should support our students like Jay that are inside and give them the right textbooks and give them the computers that they need to do their homework, where they're competing against students inside of college environment and often not being able, they don't have access to the internet inside. So, okay, you need to do your paper and you're doing your paper and you're literally using whatever library you could possibly find inside the walls and who knows how effective that is. And then God forbid there's a lockdown inside because then two classes totally stop altogether. I just think that college and prison is an amazing thing. I'm going to NCHEP in a few weeks, the Higher Education and Prison Conference down in New Orleans. And it's true, we're going to be talking a lot about Pell, and everyone there is vested in it. But the truth is that it's right now, we have to be thinking about how do we support our students and how do we really be intentional about it and be curious of what success looks like for them and not set them up for failure, but set them up for success. We do welcome any organization that needs support, that's looking for tutoring. We just got the digital equity grant, and we're working on putting tutoring onto tablets so that they can do live tutoring in their cells. So when there is a lockdown, they have somebody they can reach out to and still get math support, get reading support, and things like that. So I welcome those kind of discussions. And Danielle, thank you for giving me the opportunity. But I think this is a really important issue right now, and it's a place where we need to be advocates for some of this and advocates for change. But also advocates to make sure that programs like this continue and Goucher and other places around the country get to continue doing their work.
So we skipped over a couple of slides and stuff because I want to save enough time to be able to ask if anybody has any questions. Also, especially Jay, you're the star of our show, so. Especially if anybody has any questions about the student experience, Jay's experience, the future with Goucher, and that sort of thing. So, anybody? Yeah. Oh, here, you want to do Mike's?
Educational program access is usually available, especially in the jail. In our, usually in our, what we would call minimum level security, in our reentry program, our jail, but especially in South Carolina, our maximum level security, our medium level security program is not available. And our mental health programs, educational programs not available. And it's a big issue for me. And so I was just wondering if you all experienced that. In more of the maximum level security, medium level security, is there limitations in the program? Because when I have went more across the state and started working with other individuals and sort of brought into my work, working with very prisons, programming becomes more than it is when we start dealing with prisons that have more maximum and medium level security. And that, one, is sad. And two, I commend you all for not looking at the crime and only focusing on the programming that
Right.
I have found in certain states that only certain facilities have programming. And I'm gonna call South Carolina out on it. It's not they have their reentry program is less than 90 days of focusing on reentry. They actually lessened it to 50 days. It's not
Right.
So we do. But I would also say that there's great data out there that supports the proposition that the more programming you do inside, the less violence there is inside.
correct.
And I think
That is
the other thing that we've done in the last year is we started using long-term inmates and people that are incarcerated to be our tutors. Because they become our credible messengers through the system. So, yes. So yes, I think it is a big problem, but it's that data that also can swing at the charge, and convince a warden or superintendent that they have to start looking at it differently, and that there's value there for educating everyone, not just, the low-level offenders.
Back off of some of what Jeff is saying and just highlighting like two separate things. The first thing is that we, being in the system, if someone is sentenced to life, that doesn't always necessarily mean life. So why should life stop for that person? Because anything could change in the system to release this person. And that has happened before, right? People have went back, fought cases, found not guilty, and are released. What are we releasing them to? And what skills are we making sure that they have the access to help them post-release? And then secondly, the culture inside prison, a lot of the elders in the community are people that have been there for a long time and are highly respected in the prison. More so, and I hate to say this, Danielle, more so than the officers, right? They have a lot of influence and control. Who do you want that person to be? Right? Do you want that person to be someone that doesn't have access to education, that doesn't know how to successfully resolve conflict resolutions? Like, we want to give people the tools, even if they're not being released, but to help maintain a positive community inside the walls while they're there.
And I think that goes back to like Jay, and you might be able to speak on this, like the experience of helping each other, right? Like what Ramika was saying, I don't know if you heard her, was that going to an officer to get support or help on something that's happening on the tier is not always the best way to go about getting that support, help, or that issue resolved, right? So how does that really work, and how have you found that community and that support, especially in the education programs? And I know you're at medium right now, but have you always been at medium?
No matter that one time Patuxent was max. So when I was with Patuxent, it's a max level institution. And one of the things I found was I have to create systems in order to deal with the chaos and violence in this and prison spirit. I have to find ways to work outside of them, because I find myself in places where I shouldn't be, knowing things that I shouldn't know, but that's the only way to stop it. That's the only way to intercede. Like, for lack of a better way to say it, in this environment, it's a group of men that's violence interrupters. So when stuff go on, we have to know, but we can't then turn that information over, because then we'll be isolated or marked ourselves. But through knowing that information and being who I am, then I can walk and say, like, look, bro, I know I'm not supposed to be here. I know this and I know that, but look, I think there's a better way to handle it. Are you willing to sit down with me and try to discuss a better way to handle this, so that this young guy's life not altered? Because everybody that come in prison don't leave. And then everybody doesn't leave the same way they came in. For a lot of us, trauma happened in our lives before we came to prison. And then coming in this environment, more trauma go on. So unless we find a way to stop the trauma cycles, then by the time we leave, all we gonna have and all we gonna remember is our trauma. So then we're gonna inflict that trauma on other people when we experience situations the same or like. So without education, without having new ideas to deal with old problems, we'll be stuck in the same cycles. And those same cycles, we gonna get the same thing. They say insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. When you look at prisons in general in America, we haven't taken the time to rehabilitate people in the right way. We haven't took time to deal with the traumas. So if we don't educate, if we don't deal with traumas, then we putting out a product worse than we took in, right? As a corporation, even when you look at what they're doing now, they're looking at efficiency in the government. So this will be one of the worst places because the efficiency now. When you look at recidivism, like if you continually putting people out that's coming back here, it means that you're not efficient at your job of rehabilitating people. So being inefficient, then we gotta find new ways. And the only way to get a person to choose success over violence is to educate.
Yeah. And most of like our programs in Maryland, when it comes to education programs, reentry programs, that sort of thing, it's mostly in our medium security. We do have, actually one of our maximum, JCI, has the most programming out of any of our institutions actually. And one of the things that we've instituted at our Supermax and a lot of our max is our certified peer recovery specialist, whereas our II population helping other IIs and peers to actually get the support that they need for any sort of recovery issues. It could be mental health, it could be substance abuse, it could be that sort of thing, to help support each other, right? And actually, he was in here and I think he walked out, or maybe he came in and left. But actually, one of the principals, Ken Gaston, who is the principal at MCIJ for our ABE and GD program, had stepped in here a little bit ago. But if you get to see him, he's actually won an award for our social media influencer sort of thing. He's a good one to talk to about some of the programming that is available at the facility. I'm sure you're familiar with Mr. Caston there. Jay. Right. Sounds good. Anybody else? Yeah, it is. And I think like having those communities within those educational programs, like Goucher's little student community that help each other, right? And we've tried working at some of the facilities, it works a little better than others, where we put everybody that's in the program on the same tier, right? So that they can actually, they live together, they get educated together, they do homework together, they do that. Doesn't always work though, because if you have issues and you're shutting down one tier or one housing unit constantly because of problems, then they never get to go to school, right? So we found that doesn't really work all that well. And plus, it's a little better to spread them out because these guys are the ones that, like you were saying, those elders, right? They're the ones that they look up to. And we want our adult basic education students to look up to the guys that are like in Jay's, situation where he is a fellow. We want them to be able to have that connection so that they can talk to them and be like, hey, what's it like in that Goucher program? Is it really hard? Like, I'm, in literacy right now, I'm trying to make it through. I don't know. And they can actually help support them and mentor them through that. So that's always a good thing. Anybody else? I know we're a little bit over time. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Jay. Thanks, Meredith. Thanks for sticking in, trying to get our technology issues figured out. All right. Thanks, Jay. I'm sure I'll see you soon. All right. Bye-bye.